Well, hey, folks, welcome back to yet another episode of SafeTay Talk, sponsored by Whip Around, where we are cultivating a safer community out there for all of our fleet folks between our communication, our technology, and great conversations. We have a very special guest here today. We have Phil Mirisola coming to us from Coast. So we're very excited. So Coast is a partner of ours on the fuel tracking side. We've had a very great time working with you guys, and definitely one of the integrations that we've been extremely excited about. So, super pumped to see this come to fruition. I know that there's a lot going on in the background, even more to look forward to soon. So, Phil, thank you so much for coming on with us. But love to pass it over to you for an introduction, get a little bit about your background and your journey with Coast so far.
Yeah, appreciate it, and thanks for having me on. We've been a fan of the podcast since he started it, so it's kind of cool to take part in it as well. So, um, yeah, a little bit about myself, and kind of what's gotten me to Coast and the world of fleet and fleet payments, right? And I've spent a better part of my career working in financial technology, and startups specifically, focused on kind of solving kind of pain points and issues in financial services for SMBs primarily.
Hmm.
And so I spent the last 5 years working for a company out of the Bay Area called Bluevine, that did alternative lending, and banking for SMBs across a multitude of verticals, and was primarily focused on establishing partnerships across the ecosystem there, and finding opportunities to kind of better support our end customer. And yeah, like, to be quite honest, I really had kind of no background or experience in the fleet space prior to joining Coast 3 years ago, and wasn't all that aware of kind of like the intricacies and the day to day operations of fleet managers or folks that are kind of focused on solving the pain points of our end customer. And yeah, like, really got involved kind of in the early days and kind of learning the space and learning the challenges. And, one of the first things I realized when I, started talking to Coast was that, this segment of the market around payments, and, how folks transact at the pump and in the field, was very disjointed. And there was a ton of issues, that have been going on in this industry for quite some time. And so, finding a business like Coast that was like hyper focused on solving these pain points, looking to kind of help our customers protect against fraud and theft was really exciting to me and kind of drew me in.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably great for you, honestly, coming without that background and having that banking side. I feel like a lot of times when you're in an industry for so long, especially you're kind of in that day to day, especially for your end user. Sometimes it's hard to even know or even see what your pain points are. Like you almost get so used to it that it's not a pain. So I think for you to come in with your, different kind of expertise and your viewpoint around it probably brought a lot of knowledge and really solved for a lot of stuff that some folks didn't even realize needed solving, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. And like, I think you can kind of look across our business and, the folks that work for Coast today. A lot of people came from different backgrounds across different industries. And so kind of the perspectives and insights that we have, might not be founded in kind of, historical truths from the fleet space, which, I think has allowed us to evolve, and provide something that's new and exciting, that's been very well received so far.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. I mean, I know here for Whip Around, even, majority of our customer success team, some folks did same thing, didn't have the fleet background, but we actually have a lot of teachers that are on our onboarding team and because they're bringing more of that training side of things. So like, hey, we'll learn the product, we'll learn how to sit down, but they just have this unique perspective of, kind of helping folks from very different backgrounds and different learning styles and, how to kind of react to that. So, yeah, no, it's definitely unique. I think when you always want to have that industry background in certain roles, but, kind of having that outside perspective definitely makes a big difference.
100%.
So for those folks that might be listening and aren't, fully aware of Coast and what you guys do, love to, kind of hear you describe Coast and, why the fuel tracking has just been so crucial right now.
Yeah, like in its simplest form, Coast is a fuel card and corporate card kind of rolled up into one platform, powered by like a very modern, easy to use expense solution on the back end, right? And so, historically, if you look at the industry, you look at the corporate card market, you look at the fuel card market, they've always played in different sandboxes. And so, if you talk to most business owners or folks that operate within the fleet space, right, they probably have a vendor for their fuel card. And then they also have a vendor who does their corporate card or other types of expenses. And so, like, our strategy from day one was how do we solve kind of both of those pain points or challenges, on one platform with one solution. And so, simply put, Coast is a modern fuel card, and we can kind of get into the differences and logistics there, coupled with a modern corporate card that allows you to kind of manage those expenses and cut costs on the credit card bill at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's the type of information that you really want to have right in front of you, and it makes it so much easier. I actually was having this conversation earlier, obviously slightly different topic, but just about, how technology, seems to be moving in a direction where, you have all of these different pieces and all of these data points, but as of right now, they're kind of all over the place. So you can have as much data in the world, but if it's not conjoined, it's almost making it harder to keep up with some of the new tech and the new things out there. So I think that was probably one of the biggest things that we really enjoyed about you guys is because we're kind of trying to do that at Whip Around. How do we get all this information into one place? And cost is a massive part of that, making sure that you're not overspending. And if you can get your corporate card, your fuel card all in one. The one thing too that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that I really liked about you guys, I know that there are a lot of fuel card providers out there where you can only use, certain companies that they might have contracts with. And if I'm correct, I think you can almost pretty much use it, at any standard gas station. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a Visa card at the end of the day, right? So we
Yeah.
have the luxury of the Visa acceptance network, right? Which, the old tagline, anywhere you want to be. And so, we have a ton of flexibility as to, where the end customer can choose to shop and fuel up and whatever's most convenient to them, or is going to kind of save them the most money. And so, yeah, there's a lot of flexibility in the program without giving up the control, right? And at the end of the day, if you look at the fuel card market historically and like why people invest in this category as a business, you reach a certain threshold or size, where the 2% cash back on a Capital One card, right, or the incredible point savings you get through your Amex program, that gets outweighed by like the burden or what happens when you give the ntth individual in your business access to company funds to go purchase fuel. And so, the category historically, when you look at it, right, people are seeking it out for usually two primary reasons, right? One is security and control, right? If I'm going to give a new employee access to a company credit card, I want to ensure that they're using it, for the intended purpose, and I have
Mhm.
visibility into that. And then the second piece is reporting, right? Like if I'm using a regular credit card for fleet related purchases, I don't have visibility at both the individual level and at the asset level, right? And so, as businesses grow and evolve and mature, this becomes a category that they invest in from, their kind of corporate financial stack, as to, like, how do you better manage this on a day
Mhm.
to day basis? And so, if you look at the category historically, those are kind of the two reasons that it exists. And then, as you kind of come into the modern age and what Coast is doing, right, it's all about like really honing in on those two areas and solving kind of some of the pain points that, even though people went out and sought this category for those specific reasons, they didn't actually solve it.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure there's folks out there that, they're just handing a card off to somebody and then, a couple months down the road, they're finally looking at some invoices and going, "Oh my gosh, but you've spent how much? Why are you spending this much?" I bet you that probably happens more than we would think.
Yeah, I mean, like, you hear about kind of people managing their personal expenses and their personal credit card and the
Mhm.
challenges they have there. Like, you can imagine a business with 50, 100, 250 employees, out there swiping credit cards all day long, whether it's for fleet related purchases or other purchases. It's really hard to kind of keep that under control and feel like you have a good grip on it.
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, just from some of your customers so far that you heard back, are you having a lot of folks that are, either coming from other systems, or are you still talking to a lot of folks that are like manually, spreadsheet tracking their fuel expenses?
Yeah, I would say like at this point in time, a majority of folks have a solution in place. There are still a ton of businesses out there that are on traditional credit cards and are using, like I said, their Capital One or their American
Mm,
Express. But once you reach around 15 or so vehicles in the field, you usually find the category. And so for us, I would say a majority of the conversations we're having with folks are switching from a legacy provider onto kind of a modern solution like Ghosts. And so it's all about kind of solving the pain points that they have with that existing solution. Where again they sought that solution for better security and control. They're not meeting that end of the bargain, right? Or they're looking for kind of better insights or visibility into how that fleet is operating, and they're not getting that either.
yeah. Well, I know for us, I mean, we're, really trying to dial in on helping folks, kind of the same thing. I mean, our main thing is, hey, see how much you can be spending per asset, and then adding in fuel cost and efficiency is, something folks have asked us about all the time. So we were, like I mentioned earlier, extremely excited to start working with you guys to really bring that into whip around. I'm kind of curious on your side, with your involvement, from an integration standpoint, like how did that kind of come about on your side? And, what does that look like for you guys from an integration standpoint?
Yeah. So I'll kind of like talk about coasts and our integration strategy more broadly, and then specifically about the relationship with Whip Around and where it came. And for us, like integrations are core to what we do. It's how we've built our business. And we have a team of developers in house. That's all they focus on,
Mhm.
right? And I think the term integrations gets thrown around pretty loosely in our industry today. And so when you talk to customers and you ask them, hey, does your fuel card integrate with your GPS solution? Does your GPS solution integrate with your fleet management solution? Usually the answer they assume is yes. But when you dig a little bit deeper and you ask them, what are you actually getting from that integration? A lot of them are struggle to find the answer there. And so for
Mm,
us, the motivation behind how we build to other companies and what those integrations are solving for is really like that 1 + 1 = 3 scenario. And so, you've talked about it a little bit already, but people are adopting software across all aspects of their business, and adding them on, without kind of like the general oversight of how those systems talk to each other. And so for us, the idea is that, hey, right, we hold a lot of information in the credit card swipe. When those cards are used, how they should be used, what information is done with that purchase, and getting that into systems of record or taking additional information from other third party systems to confirm whether or not we should allow that card to even work when you swipe it is extremely important to like empowering businesses to use these cards appropriately. And so for us, when we think about integrations, it's like how do we actually provide additional value to the
mhm,
end customer, right? How do we make it so that when these systems are connected, you're actually getting more out of both solutions, so that you can maximize kind of your decision making and kind of how you like develop your business strategy or your fleet strategy. And so kind of that's generally been our mantra as a business and how we've approached the category in general. When you think kind of about the whip around relationship, we started chatting with you guys, well over a year ago.
Mhm.
And, again, anchored around the idea of it's like, what are the end customer doing in your system and what are they doing in our system? Right. And, realizing that whip around was the system of record. And fuel is a massive line item when you think about, the total cost of ownership of running that fleet and those assets. And when we kind of, talked about, what the opportunities might be together, we found that there wasn't a lot of good solutions in place to get fuel data back into Whip Around so that people could use it to optimize their decision making. And so the sole focus we had when we started talking was like, okay, how do we solve this for people in an automated way? And how do we make it so that that information is accurate and people can make decisions off it in real time? And so for us, it was about making sure, hey, these systems talk to each other. If Whip Around is the system of record, right? Well, let's use that to manage the fleet within your fleet card system, which is Coast. And then let's take all of that rich fuel card data that's associated with those assets and let's push it back into that system in real time so that when you're going in there and you're evaluating how that vehicle is performing or you're looking at your fleet overall and you want to know kind of what portion of your costs are being associated to fuel, right? You have that information at your fingertips.
Yeah, I mean, and you even kind of said this as well. I mean, we've seen some solutions where it's like, okay, well, if you just download your file from here with all of your information and then upload it into Whipper, I'm like, that doesn't really help anybody make decisions or get quick information. It's actually just adding extra steps into their day. So I think this for us, we were very excited to have that kind of automatic syncing, just making it much easier for folks. I think even too being able to see it even from a driver's perspective as well, seeing what the users are doing versus just what the vehicles are doing. And I know we're working closely to even automate and bring some more to the cost in the future. So I'm very excited for more that we have
Yeah,
coming
and
ahead
it
with you
all
guys.
really stems back to like the reliability of the data as well, right? So like obviously we want to like automatically push it so that someone's not responsible for, downloading a report here and uploading it here and trying to analyze that. But at the end of the day, if the data isn't reliable, and you can't,
Mhm.
100% trust what you're looking at, then it's all for nothing as well. And so like a big piece of Coast and like again anchoring back on those two ideas of how we've built the business, right? Which is security and control, right? Making sure that every time someone swipes one of these cards, it's for an approved purchase, right? And you can understand who's using it and why. And then on the other end, right, like making sure that if you're using this card on a specific asset, like, well, that actually did happen, right? And the way you check into our cards and we authorize who's using it and what vehicle they're in provides kind of little room for doubt whether or not it was Taylor filling up, a dump truck or vehicle four or however you have them labeled within your system, so that when you're going back and you're trying to track this stuff and reconcile it, you have a really good account of what actually happened. And so I would say it's kind of, there's two big pieces to, building kind of a valuable integration that customers can kind of, glean real insights off of. And one is obviously like doing stuff in real time, but the other is like, what is, core to Coast and how our product works, which is like, how do we accurately determine who's using it, and kind of, what vehicle they're in at any given moment.
Yeah, I mean that's such a I mean a lot of folks would pay for peace of mind nowadays, and I can't imagine anything more than having your money protected. Not even from, your own staff using it correctly, but a lot of these drivers are all over the place at any given time, So you leave a card somewhere, someone picks it up and tries to use it somewhere else. It's nice to know that you have that fraud protection and you're not going to find out, a couple weeks later that, some random person, found this, corporate card and has been, going on a shopping spree under under your company's dime.
Yeah, or like, I mean, think about individuals in the business, right? That realize that they can kind of skirt the system, and maybe use something for personal use, right? Like the amount of customers we run into who say, "Hey, I'd hired this guy, and for 6 months he was filling up his personal car, and I had no idea." Right? The fuel
Mhm.
bill looked pretty similar to what it did, the month prior, and so I would consistently pay it. We didn't have either the resources, the bandwidth, or kind of the understanding of how to audit all of that. And so for us, right? Like obviously we see third party fraud where someone kind of steals your card or card information and takes you for a ride as a big risk. But more importantly, it's kind of, the folks within the business, right? How do we keep them within a set of guardrails to ensure they're not kind of doing things inappropriately, whether on purpose or not on purpose, right? And so for us, right, again, when we go back to it, is how do we securely set up this system so that you can feel very confident that when you're distributing these cards, they're being used for the intended purpose.
Yeah, I mean, I'll actually wrap myself out here. We have, of course, I have my standard whip around card, and I have linked for my work travel to my Uber account. And I had no idea that that wallet automatically links to the Postmates account as well. So when doing our monthly expenses, shout out Joyce, our lovely, lovely, finance director, had reached out and said, "Hey, do you have the receipts for this?" And I realized, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, that's my last month of personal food, like, being shipped to my home. So I felt horrible. Obviously we'd have a little balance going and took care of that directly. We have a relationship where she knows, obviously, I'm not trying to like feed myself off the company card, but it's just a good example of, there's sometimes these things can happen. And if they had some of that in place, it might have been blocked. Like, hey, this card can't be used for Postmates, Uber's
Mhm.
one thing, Postmates is another. So, I'm sure little things like how, I'm usually very good with this kind of stuff. So I'd like to think if it can happen with me here, I'm sure it's happening with a lot of folks in other companies.
100%. Yeah, it is. Um, again, it's not always a bad actor, as you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
But you want to be able to catch that. And you want to be able to catch it quickly, to make sure you can course correct, and you're not paying for people's dinner every night, or paying
Yeah.
for them filling up the family boat on the way to the lake on a weekend or something.
Yep, absolutely. Yes. I had to tell Joyce too, I'm like, I promise it's my husband. I do not eat just this much Taco Bell in a given week. Well, and we've, talked about how much, technologies are changing and advancing. Where do you see, fuel tracking and fleet data integrations even evolving over the next coming years?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think like fundamentally, like where we're focused as a business is around more proactive controls, right? And so, um, you know, the last thing people want is another report, another alert that they have to check on a monthly basis, and then have responsibility to police that, or go back and address an employee for behavior, or something they might have done wrong. And so for us, it's extremely important. The more that ownership that we can take off of the individual who's responsible for this, or the business as a whole, the more money we can save them in the long run. And so I think of like proactive controls that stop this stuff before it happens, as kind of like the real, like, prize in the sky, so to speak, for what we can accomplish and do, through our program. And so think of things like, hey, we know that this truck takes diesel, right? Or unleaded regular gas, right? How do we stop that individual from purchasing the wrong grade, right? And making sure that they don't do something like put diesel in an unleaded engine, or they're just buying super, which is $1 more expensive every single time, and they don't care because it's not their money and it's not their problem, and maybe they buy it for their personal car, and so they have a habit, right? And so stopping things like that, right? Or hey, we get all of this really rich data from telematics companies. Like, how do we leverage that in our decisioning as well? And so you pull up to the gas station, and you have a half a tank of gas left, right? Well, I should theoretically not allow you to purchase more than the remaining half a tank of gas, right? And so literally shutting off the pump, once you've purchased the remaining fuel for that vehicle, so that, that business knows, there's no circumstance where, even though they have $100 on the card every day, right? If that vehicle is only going to take a remaining $50, he's not taking that additional 50 and putting it in the car behind him. Right. And so
Mm.
these are the kind of things we're thinking about. It's the direction that the industry is headed. It's like where people really care. How can you save me money? Right. That's kind of the business that we're in. It's not about like the next flashy feature. It's really about, hey, how do I not have to think about my fuel card? Right. And so if there's things we can do automatically in the back end to protect the business, to help them kind of lower these costs, because it will continue to rise and continue to get more expensive to run these vehicles. That's kind of the direction we're headed.
Um, Anything, extremely exciting specifically, for Coast, any new features, without spilling too many secrets that you guys are excited about?
Yeah, so I think there's like two things. One is like whip around specifically that I think we can get our, mutual customers excited about what we're working on in the background right now. And then another is kind of more broadly to the Coast program and how it's evolving. So yeah, on the whip around integration, like I mentioned today, it has two kind of core purposes. One, it's syncing vehicles in real time into our system, right? You shouldn't have to manage your fleet in two separate systems if whip around is the system of record. So it's keeping that list of vehicles accurate and updated within your fuel card. And then the other piece is obviously pushing that fuel data back in real time, right? So you can understand your total cost of ownership. The other piece that's really interesting to us and that we're trying to solve right now is, again, because Coast is kind of a general corporate card, we see a lot of maintenance purchases as well that come through our system. And that's really, really valuable information to a customer in Whip Around, right? And so if you're tracking maintenance history, right, or you have an outstanding work order for an oil change, and your employee goes into a Jiffy Lube and he gets that oil change done, how can you get that information back into Whip Around as a system of record? And so our goal right now is to find a way, when that card is swiped at a designated merchant that, we deem as maintenance related, how do we get that back to the asset in Whip Around? And so, you can then say, hey, when I told that employee to go get the oil change, right, I can 100% confirm that he did it because I can see the purchase in there as well. And so, um, again, tying everything back to the system of record is extremely important to us. We see a lot of value in, where Whip Around sits in the customer's ecosystem. And so, pushing more information into there in real time so customers aren't manually keying stuff in, we see as kind of a huge unlock for those businesses.
Yes, I am extremely excited for that to come out and for us to be working on that together. I know one of the biggest things that our customers really enjoy about Whip Around is the fact that they can see exactly what they're spending per asset, but they're the ones going in and keying in, hey, I've spent this much on this part. Here is my labor, close out your work order. You can attach your invoice to it. But if you can just have that sync in automatically and it's just that extra layer of everything in one place. And like you were saying, that extra layer, hey, it's accountable, it's 100% correct. That's going to be such a game changer. I know our customers are going to be very excited when they have that ability.
Yeah, super exciting. And then like on the coast side more broadly, I've alluded to the fact that we've really positioned ourselves as, the fuel card on one side that's secure and control as a fuel card. Um, it also gives you the flexibility to use it as a general purpose corporate card. And one of the biggest requests or pieces of feedback we've received from our end customer base is, well, listen, this is great. I love the platform. It's super easy to use. I find it really secure. I've got everything I need here. But I love my points, or the boss loves their points, right? Or the owner takes his family to Hawaii every year. And so we've invested, quite significantly, and will be coming out later this month with a rewards program, right? That will allow you to redeem your fuel purchases, your maintenance purchases, through travel partners, right? Think of the airlines, think of the hotels. And so, being able to kind of take all of that value that you're getting out of using this, as your core card, will give you kind of the same return that you would get from using a traditional card. And so, yeah, we're super excited about it. We think that, a ton of customers are going to, be jumping at the opportunity to kind of, get that same value out of Coast that they do with their current provider.
Oh, that is awesome. Yes. I mean, I definitely would. That's quite a game changer. Cause I mean, we've had folks here that I've been like, oh, I have the card, I'll get your flight. And they're like, no, 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 I want my points,
100%, 100%.
So,
Yeah,
oh
it's
gosh, that's a
ingrained in our
fantastic
society.
idea.
So, yeah, and with a way a lot of these businesses operate, those points are super valuable, right? You're putting a lot of spend on cards in general, and so you want to be able to kind of extract that value from, all the spend. So, yeah, that should come out later this month, and yeah, we're excited about it.
Awesome. Well, we're like I said, we're super excited for everything we having, going on with you guys conjoined. And of course, everything that you guys have going on in the background, especially with those rewards programs. That's going to be fantastic. If anyone's listening, fleet managers, operators out there that want to explore more about Coast, where's a good place that they can get started and get some more information on getting one of the
Yeah,
vehicles out
you
there?
can find us on our website, coastpay.com. It'll give you a bunch of kind of, entry level information about what we're up to. If you're a whip around customer, and you have a CSM or someone you work with closely, they have my personal information, and so they'll happily get you kind of in touch, and we can chat about kind of the opportunity and if it makes sense for the business.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Phil. I'm so excited you were able to come on, and I just appreciate your time today. I can't say enough how excited we've been about this integration, and so I'm very pumped to get the word out and all the great stuff that Coast and Whip Around are going to work on together, and just really bring a lot more benefit to both of our customers.
Yeah, appreciate the time. I enjoyed it.
All right, thanks, Phil. Talk to you soon.
Take care.